conversation, and we will post this up on our YouTube channel. Welcome everyone, and happy Friday, Friday the 5th of February. I'm happy that we are kind of continuing on our presenter series with our Zoom at Noons, and it's exciting to be able to get people to come on that hopefully will provide you folks with information that will help aid you in your business bottom line, as well as maybe seeing things in a new way or trying something new that you hadn't thought of prior to before. I'm just going to go in and do a couple of quick updates for you folks. The first thing is I'm going to do some workshops, and I'll put some of the links in the chat so that you folks have them. The first one is the RSU 24, which is the Adult Education Department out at Sumner High School. They have a free marketing and small business workshop during the pandemic. And it looks like it starts on the 11th. And they'll have one on the 11th and another one on the 25th. They're about an hour and a half long. Pre-registration is required. So for any of you out there looking to up your social media game and you want to do it at a no barrier to entry except for your time, that might be a great way to go. So I just shared the adult ed where you have to go to sign up. The second one, which was the PPP forgiveness, which was Wednesday, that already happened with SBDC. Also, there was a mainstream finance grants and navigating loans and grants and resources, and that happened yesterday. Most of these you folks got on your Wednesday email. The last one is for all of you folks out there in the creative realm. The Maine Arts Commission Winter Workshop Series is happening next Tuesday. Heart of Ellsworth, along with Artsworth. They are the Down East region co-hosts. So we're part of organizing an hour of the 3-hour-long program. So we're organizing that to be with a couple of different local artists, a couple of different gallery owners, and a couple of area nonprofit executive directors who will be updating us on sort of a state of the arts of Down East Maine. So I just stuck that link in the chat. So that's mainarts.gov. And in there, you do have to pre-register. Again, the workshop series is free. And mostly they're going to be updating folks on their grant system and all of the deadlines and processes by which to apply for grants through the Maine Arts Commission. So any of you folks out there who are artists in the state of Maine, you have to be a resident, but you can apply. There is a COVID relief fund for artists that is $1,000. And I will say the application process is pretty simple. And then there are other grants throughout the year that they offer that can also be of use to people. So, so yeah, that was updates that are still available. And please, if anyone has any questions at all about any of those, please do email or reach out if you need any help at all with that. Again, for all of you who just joined, we are recording and this will be posted to our YouTube channel. The other thing, I'm going to put this in the chat too, because some of you may not have been able to print it off, but Kevin, who I'm going to introduce in a moment, is going to be presenting today for us. Kevin grew up in Portland and Westbrook, and he lives in Dedham now, but he works out of the Ellsworth office for Brown Holmes Milliken Agency. And Kevin is going to present about commercial insurance, workman's comp, and other types of insurance, and showing possibly maybe how you folks can take a look at your current policies, or if you're looking for a new policy, what to look for, areas and ways that you can save money, and making sure that you're properly insured all at the same time. I just stuck the insurance review checklist that Kevin so kindly made for all of us. I just stuck that in the chat. And one last interesting fact about Kevin, he is a dark sky advocate. So without further ado, I will let Kevin take over.
That was weird. I got like a little clicky link hand instead of my mouse pointer.
Oh,
I've never seen that before. as often as I've been doing. So hi everyone, I'm Kevin. I'm an insurance agent. And when I talked initially about doing this, I said I don't always, I teach a lot of financial literacy, a number of different things, budgeting, lending, mortgages, and insurance is always my least favorite thing to talk about, at least personal insurance. I do both. It's a very important topic, but it's easy for people's eyes to glaze over when talking about it. And I'm also very wary about, even though I'm an outside agent, so I work on commission, I have a book of business, and everyone's kind of my people. I always try and be an educator first and a salesperson last. So I always feel like I'm selling people stuff. So the checklist I came up with, wants me to save that first. Sure. I'm just gonna have to pull it up from, I thought I had it up, but I didn't, I apologize. So while I'm doing that, I will go over the intro of what I had said there. So the checklist, I was asked to speak about how you can save money on your insurance. And I have a little paragraph there in the beginning, just kind of a disclaimer. It's always a lot easier to save money on personal insurance because everything is cut and dry. And then with commercial insurance, we usually find most people are underinsured or not insured for specific risks. So a review half the time ends up, costing someone more, or finding them coverages that they were missing. Not that we're trying to upsell people on anything, but it's usually, I like to have conversations with my clients about what your biggest, I guess, fear is, or your biggest risk you think you have is. A restaurant's fears as far as what they might end up being in a lawsuit over. Some losses they might have are different than a bookkeeper's or CPA's, just different people coming into the business, or maybe you're 100% digital, which a lot of people have started digital businesses this year and finding it's easy to do it. Your risks are just different. So it's tricky because you're generally not just protecting your building, the stuff in your building, your contents, or technically the business personal property, or a vehicle if you have some sort of a commercial auto. Liability wise, you're protecting the business itself. So claims in the way of liability, employee issues, which can be related to workers' comp, can cause more financial damage than is worth to save money on a policy. So it's not one of those things as cut and dry as, you've got a 2001 Beat or Honda Civic. Deciding whether to put full coverage or liability only on that is a no-brainer. They're not going to pay anything out if you have full coverage on it anyway, so why not save money? But when you're talking liability or professional liability or malpractice, all those different coverages, foregoing some of it is just asking yourself, okay, this coverage is unnecessary. I can save money by cutting that. But what would it cost you if you had to put some sort of a claim in related to it, when that particular extra coverage might cost you $100 a year? So the number one thing starting out on the list, the checklist, is first and foremost shopping your insurance regularly. Most people, everyone has a different opinion of it. I tell people you can look at it every year. Most of you guys are probably very, very very busy business owners who don't have time to look at your insurance policy every single year. So you kind of rely on your agent to do that. I make the assumption that most business owners who I talk to, big and small, are usually with an independent agency already. Brown Holmes Milliken, our sister agency, Lynham down in Bar Harbor, Cross Insurance, or JT Rossborough, all independents. Because the nature of most businesses, you can get most basic stuff from State Farm or Allstate or some of the other large companies, but the smaller mutual companies are the ones who are writing some of the huge business risks, and a lot of the smaller ones, it's just in their nature. So I say that because if you're with an independent already, we have the ability to look at your policy every year, or if you ask us to. We typically don't automatically look every year unless it goes up a certain amount. We're automatically notified when you get a renewal. Every single renewal at any independent agency you work with should be, and typically is looked at, okay, this has gone up over 10%, or it's gone up 5% in the last 3 years. Why is this happening? They're not changing any aspects of their business. We're going to revisit that for them. But like I'll say repeatedly in the rest of this checklist, your business is probably changing all the time. Even a small thing could change your insurance entirely. So it's always good to have a really healthy relationship with your agent and have an agent who's communicative and checks in with you. I go visit my business customers with their policy in hand. Not so much with the pandemic, but I'll still go see people and drop off the policy and just say, hey, have you had any changes? Are you doing less business? Let's revisit the risk that you have going on and see if we should bring that down, or you're having more risks. So we have multiple carriers. Most standard risks, a lot of the different mutual companies and the larger companies will write. So you have a lot of options to shop with and see who might be the most competitive. There's some that only one carrier. I have, I think, like 22 different standard carriers that are well-known names who you can look at. And I have a couple risks that they seem like pretty basic risks. One carrier is the only one that'll look at them. We specialize in these people. All the other ones don't want anything to do with it. So everyone has different appetites. When you do that shopping, we say, if you're paying a certain amount and you're comfortable with it, when you got the policy, if you shop every year, you kind of run into this issue. It's common with like homeowners insurance, where maybe you're not a terribly risky business to that carrier, but every time you shop, you might look at, saving like $100 a year on your risk. But there's usually inspections that go with that. So you have to look at, and the agent should know, they should have that conversation with you. This particular company is happy and I'm paying, $600 or $700 a year. This company will do it and they're going to save me $100 a year. But maybe you sign them up and then a month later they come back and say, well, we went out to the business and they didn't have wet floor signs or something. I don't know, something stupid. And then they cancel it and then you're back to square one. So the agent should help you with that. But the biggest cost saver is just shopping your policies every couple of years. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to interrupt me or put it in the chat. I don't mind being interrupted at all. Number 2 is making sure you aren't paying for coverage you don't need or no longer need. Like I said, having a good relationship with your agent or the company, if you talk to the company directly, they should be able to identify like what changes you have going on. You let them know. You can let your agent or the company know if changes are happening right in the middle of the year. I had XYZ property. I had $40,000 worth of inventory sitting in my store, and I made a change to my business. I'm not going to carry this particular product or service or whatever, and I don't need that much risk anymore. You can just take it off. They would prorate it for the rest of the policy. So you can make those changes mid-policy. You don't need to wait till renewal. Unfortunately, a lot of that is on the burden of the insured you to let the agent know, because as often as I might visit some of my commercial customers, I don't always know what's going on inside, what's going on in the operations. Sometimes I found out things from some of my insureds on Facebook. Oh, you're not offering this product or service anymore, as of like a month ago. Let's have a conversation and get that off your policy so you're not paying so much. And then a lot of these, I kept this as broad as humanly possible. Business insurance can be tricky because there's completely different industries that have different standards and different needs. So if some of this seems completely unapplicable to you, not applicable, or just like completely out there, I apologize, but it's broad, believe it or not. So the paying for coverage you don't need, that could be something as simple as what we're seeing a lot with the pandemic right now is people having coverage for like either doing deliveries. They weren't doing deliveries before, now they're doing deliveries. That's usually a separate coverage or risk you have to look at, is adding, you're going out to someone else's premises or business to deliver something or perform a service or something like that, or having customers come into your place of business. That hopefully hasn't changed for a lot of you, but you're usually paying for a set amount of liability to expect people to come in, and maybe they're consulting with you or they're buying certain things. So that's changed with the pandemic. Making sure you don't have any extra vehicles. If any of you have commercial autos, vehicles, drivers, or property on a policy. Again, going back to one of my insureds who's right here in Ellsworth was doing a project and had about $25,000 worth of equipment that he was working with another local business installing. And while it was in his custody and care, he raised the limits on his policy, which were like, I think, a default of 10,000. He never has anything like that, up to 40,000 to accommodate for that, including when it was physically being brought to the business. And then when he was done, he dropped it off. So property includes business, personal property, or whatever else you might have. I can't tell you how many times I go to write someone, I'm taking them from another agency, or I'm just looking at their policy and giving them a second look. And it's like, oh, you have XYZ employees or vehicles or drivers. And they're like, oh, that person hasn't been here for like 2 years. And maybe they didn't have the best driving record. And it's like, well, let's get them off your policy. And again, you don't have to wait to renewal to make those changes. Ensuring revenue and payroll is accurate from year to year. So a lot of the insurance companies won't necessarily audit your payroll every year, but a good example is a lot of businesses that were starting during the pandemic and doing focused industries where they were looking at doing like 50,000 in their first year. It's just me and my wife, and we're going to do, like, one of them was doing in-home healthcare, and we're looking at doing like maybe 50,000 the first year. Called me 2 months later, said they hired 2 employees. They're looking at doing 100,000. Called me at renewal and said they have 18 employees and they're looking at doing close to $500,000. So things can change pretty rapidly for some people, up or down. If a couple clients have said, we were running like 500,000 in revenue or gross receipts or payroll figures, we let a couple people go because of the pandemic, or we slowed down our operations quite a bit. That stuff can matter, especially at renewal. We're just not functioning on the same level that we were before, or we're doing a lot better. So some of the policies, it depends on the carrier, can be rated based on your gross receipts. If you're doing, if you're a therapist and you're seeing X amount of people, but the revenue is a therapist or a psychologist or something, you have an office, they would ask at writing your policy how much you think you do. You say, I'm going to see X amount of clients and maybe take in like 100,000 that year. I don't even know if that's realistic for therapists or not, but saying 100,000 versus 250,000 or even $1 million, what that tells the insurance company is you're dealing with that much more business. You're having that much more exposure. You're seeing more people. It's the difference between like a small mom and pop retail store versus like having a Cabela's come to town or something, and they're writing that much more. So the exposure there is greater. Payroll, sometimes they'll look at just payroll. So I think a lot of you are probably just like solopreneurs or one-off business owners. They'll look at your payroll exclusively, not so much the revenue. And there's state minimums for that, but payroll can be a factor. And then, yeah, that can be adjusted annually. It can really be adjusted pre-annually, but what you can do is they can audit it after the fact and say, okay, or I'm sorry, what they wouldn't do is, in that guy's case who said he was going to do like 50,000 and then he was at 100,000, they wrote it accurately at 50, 60,000 a year. The insurance company isn't, I've never seen an instance where they went back and said, well, you actually did 100,000 that year, so we're going to retroactively charge you for all this money. They don't do that. They would just look at it at renewal. And then in relation to that, payroll, workers' comp. So I don't know how many of you have W-2 employees and you have workers' comp. It's not really that's number 6. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll come back to that. So number 5 is a popular one, consolidating coverages and policies. What that means is we see people with different coverages with different carriers. Sometimes you have to do it. Like I said, you might have one carrier out of a couple dozen that only does your specific risk. They'll only write that building because it's that old, or you're doing a very specific niche thing. They'll only write you. They'll only write your liability, or they'll write the property and the liability, but you can get the property, your building, or your furniture, or whatever, inventory cheaper elsewhere. Sometimes you have to split those, and that's okay. Oftentimes getting it on a BOP, which is a business owner's policy, is one of the cheaper ways to go by combining the two. You get it all in one policy. So that would be like, it might include your general liability and maybe even professional or errors and omissions, if that's part of what you do, and your liability, your professional, and any other liabilities, and your property. So those are usually the least expensive. Some companies offer discounts if, maybe they can't combine them. They do what's called a commercial package policy. It's not a BOP, but it's taking your auto and those other things and putting it, they're technically different policy numbers, but they're all, you're kind of getting a discount for having them all at the same company. So that's an option. Going back to the workers' comp with number 6, workers' comp, there's really, the kind of nice thing about workers' comp is theoretically you should never pay any more or less than what you're actually doing for payroll, because it's based on your payroll. If you say, it's some people have it lined up with the calendar year, and they have their workers' comp starting on the 1st, which is great. Some CPAs might force you to do that because it's easier to figure out at the end of the year. But the way it works is simply you say you're going to do a set amount of payroll for that year. Maybe it went up or down, and you're rated for it. If you, at the end of the year, you said you were going to do 50,000 and you didn't have as many employees as you thought you might, or you did much better, they're going to do an audit at the end of every year. It's required, and you can have a CPA or a bookkeeper do that for you, which, sometimes paying that person to do that is just much easier than the headache of doing the audit. Or it's not really a money saver because you're never going to pay more or less. Comp as you go, or pay as you go, comp as you go is the MEMIC term, is the option to whoever's processing your payroll, even if you're doing it yourself. You take a little bit of an extra step and submit your payroll weekly or biweekly or whenever you do it. And it's going to take that workers' comp rate out of your policy, so or rate out of your payroll. So instead of paying in full for the year or paying a set monthly or quarterly premium for the workers' comp, and then figuring out if you're going to get a refund or pay in more at the end of the year, it should equal out at the end of the year. And it's just easier for people. I don't have to worry about making that workers' comp payment. It just comes out of my payroll. I see the cute puppy there. And then lastly, and I say it's not common because most agents are good enough that they don't try and slap unnecessary bells and whistles, endorsements, extras on your policy, because most people realize it's my philosophy is you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Because if someone's overcharging you to, I guess, put more money on their book, they throw a bunch of extra stuff on there, which maybe it's something they feel you might need later on down the road, but they didn't really have a conversation with you about it. They're just like, we're going to load this policy up and make that person insurance poor. That's the number one thing I hear is people say, like, please just, be honest with me, be straight with me. I don't want to be insurance poor. And there's always some sort of a saying that you might have heard other people say before, there's no such thing as too much insurance, which is half true. When you're struggling through a pandemic or you're trying to make your business work, and you feel like you're being taken advantage of, or you just don't have the time to review your insurance all the time to make sure you have it right, it's our job to make sure you're not paying for something that's unnecessary. It doesn't happen a lot, but there are some odd coverages for scenarios that would never be applicable to you, that people can put on policies. I had a guy who I wrote he's a property manager, and he had a condo up north, and the quote I had given him was with the same company another agent had given him, and mine was like $400 less. And he's like, well, what's the difference? It's the same, and we should be able to come up with the same prices with the same companies. And what had happened was that other agent, I don't know if they did it intentionally or if they just said, well, they should need all these things. It was like the Premier Ultra Super Duper bells and whistles package on there. And he's a good friend of mine, and he's looking through it, and he's like, I don't need all these crazy, like, it's just a condo, and there were all these crazy extras that would never ever be applicable to any sort of a loss or claim he might have ever incurred. And they were like nice things, but it was like, oh, with this fancy package, instead of getting $500 to replace a fire extinguisher that might have been used to put out a fire, you get $2,000. And it was just crazy stuff like that, where he was like, I don't need to pay an extra $400 a year to have all these feel-good bells and whistles. So that's really all I have on the checklist, I guess. I saw one comment about. I'm sure the insurance is complicated for that. I believe it. The summary here just says the challenge with commercial or business insurance, and those two terms are the same. If anybody doesn't know, I have to sometimes advertise myself by telling people I'm commercial and business are the same. Small business, large business, they're interchangeable terms. But just kind of touching again on the fact that it's completely different from industry to industry, risk to risk. I have a lot of people say, hey, so-and-so is, I wrote someone for, they were a solopreneur, and it was like literally the least amount you could get with that individual. And I guess I should touch on that real quick. Some of these companies, your risk might be so small or so, I guess, not risky, that it hits what's called minimum premium. Like, that's literally the cheapest you could get anywhere. And you can shop it, but you kind of bottom out at a certain rate, usually like $500, $600, $700, depending on the industry. But some of those people say, XYZ is getting a rate with this company. We use MMG up in Presque Isle. They write a lot of commercial policies around here. XYZ is getting a great rate there. I kind of do what they do. How come I'm not getting the same rate or close to it? And it could be, one little thing that you're doing that's different than theirs. That one when filling out the application, yes, I do deliveries, or yes, I go out on clients' properties, or yes, when I'm, there's probably, when I'm having clients in here, I'm doing this physical service for them, like a PT or something, and you're taking it to that next step. And that can be the difference of like another $500 on your policy. So it's just important to, like I said in the very beginning, I approach my clients and ask them what risks they're most concerned about. And sometimes it's, I have this policy, I have this GL policy, and I I have a cert on my wall that says I'm insured, and I update it every year, and I have coverage for my property. And then you ask them, okay, what's your biggest fear of, some sort of claim happening in your business? They tell me it's some particular thing that actually ends up being like a professional liability or errors and omissions claim. So then I have to turn around and say, well, you don't have to buy this particular insurance, but if you don't and that particular thing happens, you're not going to be covered for it. Or it's the other way around. I'm concerned about someone slipping and falling in my place of business. And I mean, I imagine everybody has a general liability, but I've seen a couple of people with professional liability only, graphic designers or web designers or something like that. They don't have a GL, and they have a place of business, a physical space. And a lot of people are like, well, my landlord has, or the building owner has policy coverage, so I don't actually need that. And it's the number one thing I have to tell people: if someone comes into your place of business or your space, whether it's there or you're driving a client somewhere for some reason or something to a job site, and there's some sort of an accident, even though the landlord or the building owner has insurance, they're going to go after your general liability for that. Or if the building's covered for, if it burned to the ground, the landlord has that coverage. But if you're in there burning stress reliever candles or something, and you're found negligent for setting your part of the building on fire, or it causes the whole place to go up, his insurance company is going to go after you. So I always tell people, just have that conversation, tell people what you're concerned most about with your risks, and go from there. And a good agent would make sure you're not overpaying for something you don't need, or that you might be missing something. So that's all I really have. And sorry for kind of stumbling through that, but I wanted to talk more about saving money than just general education, and that's what I came up with. So, any questions for anybody at all? Well, thank you very much.
Kevin, I think that the checklist was really great. I think that it's a nice tool that even can be passed on to people who are not up. Thanks, Heidi, for the thumbs up on that one. I just think it's great, and we'll pass it on to more folks on our business list that were not able to be here today. But I think it's a nice starting point because people can jot notes in. And I stuck it in the chat a couple of times, but I'm also going to stick Kevin's information in the chat again, just in case you folks have follow-up questions that you want to ask. And again, we do have other insurance agencies, in Ellsworth or the greater Ellsworth area. But Kevin and I connected over something else, and it just sort of kind of naturally came up, and Kevin was willing to do the presentation. So we thought that it was.
Anyone else losing her, or is it just me?
Oh, can you folks hear?
You're cutting out. I don't know if it's just me or not.
No, I don't think so. I don't have great internet connection.
Now we can. You're frozen though. Oh, there you go.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that, folks. But Kevin, I really appreciate you being here. And I actually have a question. Do you find that it's typical of tenants and landlords to actually have conversation about coverage versus non-coverage, and what kind of coverage they should have and things like that? Or do you find that that's not really a common conversation that happens?
I think, unfortunately, that's not a common conversation as much as you'd think, because there's several people who I right? Very, very small people who are just renting a small space. And they may not even necessarily be seeing someone there, and they didn't have basic general liability. So that tells me the landlord wasn't asking them for proof of insurance, which, if they don't do that and the landlord's not asking them for that, it's not the end of the world. And they're exposed, but it's their choice, if they're not being forced to get insurance. A lot of the times I end up putting, I tell people, like, I'm not pushy. It's not a sales pitch. It's an education pitch. I put a quote out there, take it or leave it. And a lot of people like, well, I'm not really at the point where I feel like I need insurance, which is really, if you're doing any sort of business, you're giving advice, providing a product or a service, you really need it. But a lot of people come back to me and say, okay, I'd like to buy that policy now. And it's like, okay, what changed? Or, what did you feel like you got to that point? And they started working with somebody like a large organization that said, we're not going to work with you unless you have insurance. Or sometimes people will have some sort of a scare and then realize, well, I need to be covered for this. But yeah, maybe some of the larger buildings, I don't write like any of the big buildings downtown Ellsworth or Bangor or anything like that. But with a large building and some more professional offices, they might have something like that, but in some sort of a lease agreement. And that's no different than like a landlord asking one of their tenants, because I think technically they can't force them to, but getting like a renter's policy, college kids or whatever renting a house or a duplex would like you to have a renter's policy to cover your stuff, so you don't try and sue me if the place burns down for the loss of your stuff. Good question.
Yeah, no, that's great information. Some people on this call, I do know, own their own business, and their building is owner occupied, and then other people rent spaces. So that's a great synopsis of the situation. Yeah, are there any other questions for Kevin or about the presentation that folks have on the call?
I have a question. I don't know if I missed it, and I apologize for coming in late, but I was just wondering, I was seeing something on the checklist, and it was making me wonder about, it was asking about, if you have anything old that's on there, old vehicles or anything, and is there such a thing as like marrying your personal and your professional insurance together to lower rates?
When you say like personal home and auto,
Yeah.
yes, in the sense that
Or is that really not done?
some companies offer a discount depending on which company it is and what like business you're in. Some of those companies offer a discount for having your personal stuff with the homeowners. But as far as like literally having some of those in conjunction with one another, there is there is a case with commercial auto, I guess, more than anything, where you can I've seen some business owners add their personal vehicles to their commercial auto, even like their teenage drivers, because in some cases it's been cheaper. I haven't done that personally for anyone yet, but we have a couple clients that do that. Commercial autos are typically more expensive, but in certain situations, it just happens to work. And it also depends on how the business is written. Is it a sole prop? Is it an LLC, a corporation? Are you excluding yourself from this or that? So it doesn't hurt to look into it. I think MMG Andover, which is typically a home only company, they have a couple, those two companies will ask if they have their personal home or auto with them, and then they'll offer some sort of a discount. Or at the very least, is their business insured with us, and then they'll discount your auto and your home.
Thank you. It never occurred to me before. So
yeah, and oftentimes it might just not be worth it. I mean, I have some people like, hey, can we combine those with the same company to get a discount? It's like, well, this company, they would do it, but your auto would be like $500 more, and then you get a discount of $100, or if we brought your commercial policy over there, it would be X amount more. So
Right.
I do a lot of math all day.
Are those companies that you mentioned, are those companies that you work with?
Yeah, Andover, MMG, and we have 22 of them. And they're the smaller mutual companies, which I have a hard time convincing some people who've never been with an independent agency before. You know, Concord, which is out of New Hampshire, they're technically owned by a much, much larger company. And some people are like, well, I don't know Concord. And, you know, the rate is literally half what I'm paying now. And yeah, I could save $1,000, but they don't have commercials about emus, and they don't, which we write with Liberty Mutual commercially. Emus and Aaron Rodgers and the nationwide jingle with Peyton Manning and the country guy. Sorry.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they'll say something like that. You know, I'm not going to put my $600 a year car with them, but those mutual companies, besides being, you know, more local than the very large companies, they're writing, you know, 20, 30, 40, they're writing accounts where the premium is like upwards of $50,000 a year. People are paying that much in insurance. And the auto and the home is just something else they do. So it's nice to have a variety and be able to shop and beg an underwriter to take this particular risk or not to save someone a good amount of money. But yeah, those are all companies I work with, and they're pretty good ones.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in to say, give a shout out. I work with Amy Harper.
Oh yeah.
Brown Milliken. Yeah, and years ago, she really sat down with me. She spent a lot of time with me going through my insurance and ended up saving me a ton of money.
She's a trooper.
Yeah, she really dug it out for me. So I really appreciate that. And I ended up actually putting my personal and my commercial under the same mutual, you know, a smaller main group.
Yeah.
And that's been really nice for me in the sense that I have one login. And while they're separate policies and I pay them separately, at least when I go in, it's like it's all in one spot. And so it's nice and convenient. And I appreciate that. And it's a main company, which is even better. So anyway, thank you guys for taking good care of me. So
yeah, and sometimes that's all it is, you know, I'll pay. I don't even want to save money. I just want to have one login because some of us are so busy. Like there's some particular things that I do the same, like 3 or 4 extra clicks every day, and I'm like, God, I would save like an hour a week if I didn't have to do this one extra thing. Please take it away from me. Thank you. I'll let her know. Anyone else? All right.
I also just want to echo Heidi's sentiment. We use Amy as well, and she's amazing. She has definitely helped us out quite a bit navigating commercial insurance, which was something I never had prior experience with until about 3 years ago. And then Heart of Ellsworth is actually insured. I forget the name of the company, but we work with Rossborough. So I also just want to say too that there are some really, really great, you know, companies all over Ellsworth, not just Brown Holmes and Milliken, but Brown Holmes and Milliken is great. And so glad that Kevin agreed to do this. But one thing I will also do is put a plug in for these local agencies. I don't know about everybody else in the call, but for me, if there's a problem, I like to be able to walk in somewhere and talk to a real person. Like that is so huge this day and age. And we're lucky with that too, with community banks and community insurance companies and all those sorts of things. So there's a power to not going with Geico, right? So I just want to say that too. So I so appreciate you being on here. And I think, Linda said she sent a question.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, you got it. What
I was
was
listening to you and formulating a response on my head at the same time.
Multitasking. Okay, so you have it. You'll respond.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, and while Kevin's doing that, are there any other announcements? We have about 11 minutes left, so I just wanted to put out there, do we have any other announcements or questions about things going on in downtown? Again, total open time for people to speak up. And here we go.
I wasn't here last week, and I was just wondering. I watched the video about the PPP stuff, but I didn't know if we if we were going through Shannon Byers again, if we were looking for grant information
Oh, so
with
the,
the
I
new
mean,
grants that opened up.
oh, for the PPP?
No, wasn't there another one that was like there, like that there were state ones last year and now they opened up a federal grant?
Oh, there was a federal grant that was, or excuse me, it was a state grant that was for, I believe it was, what do you call it? The industry that they were supporting was so a while ago, and I think it closed, and I can't remember what it's called.
She'd
The
be the best resource for that.
Well, it depends. Like the PPP, for example, that would be through a local
Bias.
bank. Yeah.
Yep.
Shannon, as far as grants about or from SBDC or CEI, you could certainly probably, I would say, scour their website before, and I can look too for you last to see what I can find. I'm
Okay.
trying to find more grant opportunities for you folks because
Thank you.
we want to, absolutely, it's hard right now. I haven't seen any. The last ones that we put out were from National Main Street. And we had a few applicants from downtown Ellsworth, which was really exciting to see that. I think we had at least a handful, maybe even a little more than a handful of businesses in downtown that applied. But I'm trying to find another one because we have a professional grant writer that has offered to do a workshop, much like Kevin just did, a presentation on grant writing for one of these Zoom at Noons. But I want to line it up to be when there's like a 2 or 3 week deadline ahead of her doing it so that you folks can learn the knowledge and then apply it right away. So I'm on the search right now. If anyone finds any grants that are small business grants that pertain to downtown, I mean, please send them my way so that we can get you guys the tools that you need to put forth a really good application.
I thought there was one. If I come across it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'll have to look back at some of the other emails that I've sent you guys to see what I can find that still might be open. But yeah, I mean, you could email Shannon, but probably the best thing to do is probably just go on to the SBDC website and there'll be news, grants, things like that will be on there. And I'll see if I can find a link for you.
Is the EIDL, is that a separate website?
I'm
Or is
not
that, would
sure.
that be on there?
I don't know. I'll have to do a little research for you. So. And there was also a state of Maine one too that was, I think, for like the tourism. I can't even remember what it was now. Yeah, I'm hoping that we're going to see a few more grants come through, grant opportunities come through for you folks that you can apply for. But yeah, are there any other questions for folks? All right. Well, it seems like that we can end a little bit early today, but Kevin, thank you so much for being with us and for putting together that tool. I think that's really helpful for folks who were able to tune in today, but also folks who weren't able to be here.
You're welcome, and had a long conversation with you, but hopefully connecting you with some other people who will be able to give some pretty sweet advice. Much more interesting than insurance to you guys in the future.
Well, insurance, yeah, but it's necessary. So,
yeah,
and timely, so thank you for your expertise because that's what's important.
You're welcome. Thank you guys.
All right. Well, unless there's anything else, thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Thank
See you
you.
later.